The Ethiopian Bible, one of the oldest and most complete biblical texts, carries a history unlike any other. Its origins lie in the heart of Ethiopia. Written in the ancient Ge'ez language, a script now used only in sacred contexts, this isn't the version most of the world knows. It's older, richer, and holds books that were excluded from other Christian traditions. And yet, its very existence has sparked controversies, leading to its suppression. Why? The story begins with its contents. The Ethiopian Bible isn't limited to the familiar 66 books. Instead, it includes over 80 texts, among them the Book of Enoch and the Book of Jubilees. These writings contain narratives that challenge conventional teachings, visions of angels descending to earth, cosmic battles, and prophecies of an apocalyptic future. To some, these scriptures offered divine insight. To others, they were too radical, their messages too dangerous to share with the wider world. Take the Book of Enoch, for instance. This ancient text describes the fall of the Watchers, a group of angels who rebelled against God and revealed forbidden knowledge to humanity. It paints a picture of creation and divine judgment that feels both awe-inspiring and unsettling. While widely read in early Christianity, this book was eventually cast aside by the Western Church. But in Ethiopia, it was preserved, revered, and cherished as part of their biblical tradition. The Ethiopian Bible isn't just unique in its contents, it also represents a different vision of Christianity, one deeply rooted in Ethiopian history and culture. While Western Christianity was shaped by councils, debates, and empires, Ethiopian Christianity evolved in relative isolation. Their churches, carved into solid rock, stand as symbols of their independence and resilience. This faith was shaped by a people who refused to let external forces dictate their beliefs. But independence comes at a cost. During colonial times, European powers sought to impose their own religious and cultural narratives on the regions they controlled. The Ethiopian Bible, with its unique books and teachings, stood as a reminder of a Christian tradition that didn't conform to Western norms. To the colonizers, it was an obstacle, a text that needed to be silenced. The banning of the Ethiopian Bible wasn't just about its content, it was also a political act. The text symbolized Ethiopia's sovereignty, a nation that had resisted colonial domination and held on to its identity. Suppressing the Ethiopian Bible was part of a larger effort to undermine Ethiopia's influence and erase its spiritual authority. And yet, this Bible remained. Protected by monks, hidden in monasteries and passed down through generations, it survived attempts to suppress it. Its survival is a testament to the faith of those who believed in its sacred truths, even when the world tried to deny them. What makes this Bible so extraordinary isn't just its age or its content, it's the resilience it represents. It's a symbol of a faith that refused to be silenced, a people who held on to their beliefs despite the odds. And as we look at this ancient text today, we're left with a question. What other truths might it hold? Truths that were once deemed too powerful or too dangerous to share? Reason 1. Political power struggles. Why would a Bible become a weapon in the battle for power? The Ethiopian Bible wasn't just a spiritual text, it was a symbol of authority. In Ethiopia, the church and its sacred scriptures were deeply intertwined with the nation's identity. This Bible, unlike any other, stood as a testament to Ethiopia's unique Christian heritage, one that existed long before colonial empires emerged. For colonizing forces and rival kingdoms, this wasn't just a religious book, it was a challenge to their authority. When European powers began carving up Africa, they sought more than land. They sought control over culture, history, and faith. Ethiopia, a nation that had resisted colonization and embraced Christianity in its earliest days, stood as a defiant exception. The Ethiopian Bible, with its unique books and teachings, symbolized the nation's sovereignty and independence. To those seeking to dominate the region, this sacred text represented a formidable obstacle. Banning the Ethiopian Bible wasn't just about suppressing religious beliefs. It was a calculated move to undermine Ethiopia's power. The Bible connected the people to their history, their culture, and their God. By silencing it, colonizers aimed to sever that connection and impose their own narratives. Visuals now show historic depictions of Ethiopian warriors standing against colonial forces, contrasted with scenes of European leaders mapping their empires. This wasn't just a struggle over a book. It was a battle for influence. The Ethiopian Bible gave spiritual legitimacy to Ethiopia's leaders, reinforcing their authority. Colonizing forces understood that controlling faith meant controlling people. Suppressing this text was as much about political domination as it was about religion. And yet, despite the bans and attempts to erase it, the Ethiopian Bible endured. It survived wars, invasions, and centuries of resistance, becoming a beacon of Ethiopia's unyielding spirit. But why was this book so threatening that even powerful empires felt the need to suppress it? What truths did it carry that made it worth fighting for? Reason 2. The inclusion of forbidden books. What could a book say that makes it too dangerous to include in the Bible? The Ethiopian Bible contains texts that are absent from most other Christian traditions, books like the Book of Enoch and the Book of Jubilees. These forbidden books are more than ancient writings. They hold stories, prophecies, and visions that some found too unsettling, too mysterious, or too radical to embrace. But what made them so controversial? Take the Book of Enoch. It tells of the Watchers, angels who descended to earth, defied divine order, and shared forbidden knowledge with humanity. It speaks of cosmic battles, heavenly mysteries, and a judgment that shakes both heaven and earth. To early readers, these stories were awe-inspiring and full of warnings, but to others they raised questions that felt too dangerous to answer. Visuals. The camera pans over ancient pages of the Book of Enoch, revealing illustrations of angels descending, fiery visions of the heavens, and cryptic prophecies. Religious leaders in the West saw these texts as a problem. They challenged conventional teachings, introduced complex hierarchies of angels, and depicted apocalyptic scenarios that were too vivid, too raw. Including these books in the Bible could spark debates and doubts that the church wasn't prepared to handle. The scene shifts to scholars seated at a grand table, poring over manuscripts with heated expressions, debating which books should be part of the official canon. By excluding books like Enoch and Jubilees, Western Christianity simplified its message. But in Ethiopia, these texts were preserved. They weren't feared. They were revered as keys to understanding God's plan. These writings offered glimpses into divine mysteries and cosmic events that many believed were essential for a fuller understanding of the faith. So why were they banned elsewhere? Was it fear of the unknown, concern over their radical messages, or a desire to maintain control over the narrative of Christianity? Whatever the reason, the decision to exclude these books left the Ethiopian Bible standing apart, holding truths that the rest of the world wasn't ready or willing to accept. Reason 3. Threat to Western religious orthodoxy. What happens when a sacred text challenges the very foundation of religious authority? The Ethiopian Bible stands as a testament to a Christian tradition untouched by Western influences. While the Roman Catholic and Protestant churches shaped much of what the world recognizes as Christianity, the Ethiopian Bible followed a different path, one that preserved books, teachings, and interpretations the West rejected. This wasn't just a matter of theology, it was a direct challenge to the dominance of Western religious orthodoxy. For centuries, Western Christianity held itself as the definitive voice of the faith. Councils were convened, debates raged, and decisions were made about what belonged in the biblical canon. But the Ethiopian Bible stood outside this process. It retained books like Enoch and Jubilees, and its teachings offered a broader, older, and sometimes contradictory view of Christian history. Visuals. The screen shows solemn gatherings of religious leaders at grand councils, with arguments erupting over the inclusion or exclusion of certain texts. A parallel scene highlights Ethiopian monks quietly preserving their ancient scriptures in secluded monasteries. To the Roman Catholic and Protestant churches, the Ethiopian Bible was more than an anomaly. It was a threat. Its existence presented an alternative Christian tradition, one that traced its roots to the earliest days of the faith and refused to conform to the Western narrative. This defiance undermined the carefully curated theological framework of Western Christianity, raising uncomfortable questions about whose version of the faith was correct. The Ethiopian Bible also challenged the idea that Christianity's heart belonged in Europe. Its survival in Ethiopia, a nation far from the centers of Western religious power, offered proof that the faith was far more diverse, far-reaching, and ancient than many in the West were willing to acknowledge. Visuals shift to historic maps of Ethiopia, glowing with its iconic rock-hewn churches, juxtaposed with cathedrals in Europe. The narrator's voice grows intense. To preserve their dominance, Western religious leaders dismiss the Ethiopian tradition as an outlier, a deviation from the true faith. Me. But the Ethiopian Bible endured, quietly asserting its place as a sacred text and a reminder that Christianity's story is far richer and more complex than a single tradition can claim. And so, the Ethiopian Bible remains unchanged, unyielding, and undeniably powerful, a witness to a faith that refuses to be confined by borders, councils, or orthodoxy. Reason 4. The role of colonialism and cultural suppression. Why would colonial powers go so far as to suppress a sacred book, an ancient text? The banning of the Ethiopian Bible wasn't just an isolated event. It was part of a much larger strategy to erase African identity, culture, and heritage. Colonial powers understood that to fully dominate a people, they needed to dismantle the very foundations of their culture and religion. The Ethiopian Bible, deeply tied to the history and independence of Ethiopia, stood as a symbol of resistance, resisting not just foreign rule, but also the imposition of foreign religious beliefs. Colonial forces weren't just after land or resources, they sought to reshape entire societies. For Ethiopia, the survival of the Bible was a direct challenge to the authority of the colonizers. It represented the unbroken spiritual and cultural continuity of a people who had long resisted foreign domination. The Ethiopian Bible was more than scripture. It was a symbol of national pride and autonomy, a defiant statement that Ethiopia's faith and identity were theirs to control. Visuals. We see historical images of European colonial powers, their flags flying high over African territories. Then, a stark contrast, colonial soldiers destroying sacred texts, torching manuscripts, and attempting to wipe out traces of indigenous cultures. The camera focuses on defiant Ethiopian monks and community members guarding their sacred scriptures. By banning the Ethiopian Bible, colonial powers aimed to weaken this cultural stronghold. They understood that religion was central to a people's identity, and by dismantling the Ethiopian religious tradition, they could undermine the fabric of Ethiopian society. The Bible was a key part of that resistance. Its preservation and continued use defied colonial narratives and affirmed Ethiopia's right to govern itself, spiritually and politically. This wasn't just an assault on one book, it was an attack on the core of Ethiopian culture. Ethiopian Christian practices, music, art, and language were deeply intertwined with the teachings found in this Bible. Suppressing the Ethiopian Bible was a way to erase those very symbols of resistance, to impose a foreign worldview and enforce submission. Visuals shift to scenes of cultural resilience. Ethiopian communities gathering in secret to read and preserve their sacred texts. Despite the suppression, the Bible continues to be passed down through generations, protected in monasteries, and guarded fiercely by the people. But despite the efforts to suppress it, the Ethiopian Bible endured. The spirit of the Ethiopian people, their unwavering faith, and their cultural resilience kept it alive. In the face of colonialism's destructive force, the Bible stood as a silent yet powerful reminder of Ethiopia's right to protect its heritage and beliefs. The efforts to erase it only solidified its place in history, a symbol of resistance, strength, and unwavering identity. Reason 5. Controversial teachings on equality and justice. What if a book's teachings could ignite revolutions? The Ethiopian Bible contains powerful messages of justice, equality, and liberation, teachings that resonate deeply with the oppressed and downtrodden. Throughout its pages, one can find stories that emphasize the importance of fighting for justice, standing against oppression, and uplifting the marginalized. These teachings are not just spiritual ideals, they are calls to action that could inspire people to rise up against injustice. To those in power, however, this was more than a set of moral guidelines. It was a threat. Colonial powers, oppressive regimes, and even religious authorities recognized the potential danger of a text that inspired such radical values. The Ethiopian Bible's messages of equality and justice could stir the hearts of the oppressed, challenging the very systems that kept them under control. Visuals. The camera shows vivid scenes of protesters marching for justice, their faces filled with determination. Footage of liberation movements, from Ethiopia to other parts of the world, interspersed with moments of Ethiopian religious ceremonies where worshippers pray for equality and freedom. For centuries, the powerful had worked hard to maintain the status quo, whether through colonialism, slavery, or economic oppression. They knew that any movement that threatened their control had to be quelled. The Ethiopian Bible's emphasis on justice, Particularly the fair treatment of the poor, the widow, the orphan, and the foreigner could easily incite resistance. It offered an alternative vision of society, one where all people are equal in the eyes of God, where justice isn't a privilege but a divine right. The inclusion of such radical ideas in a sacred text became a powerful tool of resistance. The Ethiopian Bible didn't simply talk about salvation, it talked about liberating the oppressed, about God's will for a just and equitable world. Leaders and authorities feared that these teachings would inspire the oppressed to fight back, to demand their rights, and to resist tyrannical systems. Visuals transitioned to powerful images of religious leaders preaching these radical ideas, with crowds listening intently, their faces a mixture of hope and determination. The camera zooms in on an Ethiopian woman reading the scriptures, her hand trembling with emotion as she takes in the words of liberation. In Ethiopia, where the Bible was not just a religious text but a guide to life and justice, these messages were crucial, but they were also dangerous. The very essence of the Ethiopian Bible stood in contrast to the structures of power that sought to control the people. Its emphasis on equality and justice was a constant reminder that true Christian faith is about lifting others up, not keeping them down. It was a call to rise against tyranny, to demand change, and to fight for the dignity of all people. The authorities who banned the Ethiopian Bible understood that its teachings were far more than theological. They were a powerful catalyst for social and political change. And so, in an effort to maintain control, they sought to silence the Bible, to suppress the very ideas that could lead to liberation. But even as they tried to bury these teachings, the message of justice, equality, and freedom continued to echo, resonating with generations of people longing for a better world. Reason 6. Misunderstanding and fear of its mysticism. What if the sacred text holds mysteries that could change everything we thought we knew? The Ethiopian Bible is not just a collection of historical texts. It is imbued with deep mysticism and symbolic language that has perplexed outsiders for centuries. Within its pages, there are hidden meanings, layers of symbolism, and spiritual teachings that go beyond the surface. For many who encountered it, these elements were misunderstood, often viewed as dangerous, heretical, or even threatening to the established religious order. The mysticism of the Ethiopian Bible has always set it apart. Its complex imagery, visions of heavenly realms, and apocalyptic symbols were not easily understood by those outside the tradition. While for Ethiopians, these were deeply spiritual and meaningful, outsiders often viewed them with suspicion. The Bible's rich mysticism, its references to hidden knowledge, angelic realms, and divine visions, led some to fear that it contained secrets too powerful or dangerous to be known by all. Visuals. The camera lingers on dramatic scenes of ancient Ethiopian monasteries, where monks in dark robes chant in low voices by the light of flickering candles. Their sacred manuscripts glow softly in the candlelight, their pages holding secrets that seem to shimmer with an otherworldly energy. In the eyes of colonial powers and religious authorities, this mysticism was not just a curiosity, it was a potential source of instability. They feared that the teachings in the Ethiopian Bible could disrupt the established order. Its deep spiritual symbolism and mystical elements presented an alternative worldview that threatened the more linear, structured interpretations of Scripture found in the West. For them, the Ethiopian Bible wasn't just another translation. It was a dangerous challenge to their authority, full of esoteric knowledge that could undermine centuries of doctrinal teaching. Some feared that the Bible's mystical teachings could inspire heresy, that is, a belief system contrary to accepted religious dogma. Were these teachings too radical, too mysterious? Could they lead people to question the foundations of their faith and, in turn, their societal structure? To protect the status quo, the Ethiopian Bible had to be controlled or even eradicated. Visuals shift to intense, glowing images of the Bible's mystical pages, showing angelic beings, divine judgments, and hidden revelations that seem to come to life in the flickering candlelight. The fear of what the Ethiopian Bible held is also rooted in the idea that it could unlock knowledge that wasn't just theological but transformative. In some of its most mystical passages, there are references to cosmic truths, divine mysteries, and the hidden workings of the universe. Such knowledge, in the eyes of many authorities, could be too much for the average person to handle. What if it sparked new interpretations of faith? Or worse, led to religious movements that challenged the foundation of Christianity itself. And so the Ethiopian Bible was often relegated to the shadows, its mysticism a source of fear and fascination. The authorities who suppressed it couldn't comprehend the full depth of its spiritual meaning, and so they tried to shut it down. Yet, even in the face of this misunderstanding, the Ethiopian Bible's mysteries continued to captivate and inspire those who were willing to listen to its deeper truths. Why does the Ethiopian Bible still matter today? Through centuries of suppression, misunderstanding, and political power struggles, the Ethiopian Bible has stood resilient. Its pages have survived against all odds, preserved by the faith of those who refuse to let go of their spiritual heritage. In a world where ancient texts are often lost to time, the Ethiopian Bible remains a testament to the strength of faith and the determination of a people to protect what is sacred to them. This sacred text is more than just a Bible. It is a symbol of spiritual and cultural identity for the Ethiopian people. It carries within it the legacy of generations who saw their faith and traditions threatened by foreign powers, yet found a way to ensure that their beliefs would endure. The Ethiopian Bible is a reminder that true spiritual heritage is not easily erased, no matter how hard others may try to suppress it. As the world continues to change, the lessons of the Ethiopian Bible remain relevant. Its message of justice, equality, liberation, and divine mystery speaks to us today as we grapple with questions of identity, faith, and the pursuit of truth. By learning about the Ethiopian Bible, we not only gain insight into the rich history of Ethiopia, but also into the broader struggle for religious freedom and cultural preservation that spans the globe. Visuals. The camera pans over an Ethiopian church bathed in the soft glow of the sunrise. The majestic building stands as a silent guardian of history and faith. As the sun rises, a quote from the Bible slowly fades onto the screen. "For the truth shall set you free." It is a call to seek knowledge, to explore what was hidden, and to embrace the wisdom that has been passed down through the ages. The Ethiopian Bible is not just a relic of the past, it is a living part of a continuing story, and its teachings have the power to shape our future. Take the time to learn about the Ethiopian Bible, understand its profound legacy, and let its wisdom guide you towards a deeper understanding of faith, justice, and truth.